Hello, everyone watching us live, and to those of you who are joining us on the replay. My name is LJ. I'm the founder of Maroon Arts and Culture, and I'm so excited to join you this Friday, our last Friday all together on this Working in Theater series. And I just cannot think of a better way to end this series than spending some time with my two guests today. So today we are joined by Paula Vogel and Herbert Seguenza. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Hi.
We are going to, before we get started, I just want to say welcome to those of you who are watching us. I am on the panel today from the ancestral lands of the Tonga people here in Southern California. Before I start convenings like this, I like to call on an ancestor to give me the strength and focus I need to really zero in on today's topic. And so today, I picked out this person weeks ago, but today I would like to call on Barbara Ann Tier, a veteran, a pioneer, and a person who I model a lot of my own personal beliefs after. So Paula, Herbert, thank you. And do you mind introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about yourselves? And to those of you watching, feel free to tell us where you're joining us from. And if you have an ancestor you want to shout out, you can do that as well.
Paula, please.
I'm coming from the ancestral lands of the Wampanoag up here on Cape Cod. And the ancestor I always shout out is Maria Irene Fornes for me. She, to me, is a goddess. So I'm a playwright. I have also run 2 playwriting programs. And so my life has been a kind of happy torment of balancing my love for being in the room with writers who are working and my own work. Mm-hmm. And it's been really a delightful a conundrum to be in.
Wonderful. Herbert?
Hi, my pronouns are he, his, him. I'm speaking from San Diego, which is the ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay, which crosses both borders, because there was no borders back then. So I am an original founding member of Culture Clash, which is now celebrating 36 years together, believe it or not. And but I'm currently a playwright in residence at the San Diego Repertory Theater through a Mellon grant, a very nice Mellon grant. And I've been here now 4 years, and I have 2 more years to go.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. So today's topic is moving forward, looking back. And as I mentioned, I really wanted to talk to 2 theater veterans today because we are living in a time where everything feels uncertain and the future feels uncertain. But if there's anything that I've learned from studying history, it's that everything is endurable. The theater will always endure. So today I wanted to get some advice from you both about how early and emerging career artists can prepare themselves for the future, and just kind of talk to you a little bit about your careers, and so that we can learn from them. I did share, Herbert has a short video with his theatrical journey on it. It's about 6 minutes long. It's in the Padlet. So make sure that you have access to the Padlet so that you can check that out. And then if we have time, we'll put it on today. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you both about is at what point did you realize that you were a full-time artist? And is there anything that happened in your life that helped you cross that threshold?
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but I was a visual artist before I was an actor or playwright. In fact, many people know me. I just wrote a show, 10 years ago, called A Weekend with Pablo Picasso. And it's a play that I've been wanting to do all my life. When I was 7 years old, I went to a dentist's office, and on the in the waiting room, there's all these books. And I picked up a book called The Private Life of Pablo Picasso. And it was a photography book of his private life, getting up, bathing, eating, playing with his kids, his goats. And I told my mom, man, when I grow up, I want to be this old man. He's great. I mean, he lives like a kid. And she's like, oh, no, está loco. You know, he's crazy. He's Picasso. But that had a profound effect on me, that a grown man could be childlike all his life, you know, and be an artist all his life. And that had a profound effect on me, because I said, I want to live my life this way, where I'm an artist, where I'm a child 24/7. And so I went to art school, College of Arts in Oakland. I got a degree in art, but it was during that time that I started doing community theater in San Francisco, and then eventually did some stints with El Teatro Campesino. And then and then we formed Culture Clash, which really took me on to on a journey. But it's always been something that's just, you know, naturally in my DNA. It's always been in my DNA. And I was also a poster artist, did silkscreen for many years, political posters, but always in the arts. I had no plan B ever. I never had a plan B. I never had another job. I've suffered through all the ups and downs, but you know what? The universe does provide. You know, the energy that you put into something will come back. And I really believe that. And I think people get scared, right? And they say, oh, I'm going to take a second job because I don't know if this acting thing's going to happen. But, you know, it does. It does. If you just stay in the pocket, as they say, it will pay back.
Wonderful. Paula, what about you? When did you decide you were a full-time artist?
Very late in my life. It may be that of my generation, and as a woman, I don't have the ego to call myself a playwright. I was brought up in a family where no one had ever finished high school, you know, under the poverty line. And, you know, coming forward and saying, hi, I'm going into theater would be like, I'm going to go walk on the surface of Mars. So, you know, I think in the last 40 years, as I've been teaching, I recognize that we all have these struggles. What if you're the first one in your family? What if no one in your family has ever been an artist and you don't know any artists? How do you then pursue a career as an artist? Then there's the kind of Quaker dilemma of, listen, I'm a passionate person and I really care about people. Should I be investing the rest of my life into making theater instead of helping not-for-profits in terms of social injustice and hunger and poverty? Can I say, yes, this is what I want to dedicate my life to? I'm sure this is also ringing bells. Struggled with that. Struggled with the fact that the writer in my family was supposed to be my older brother. And you know how when you've got siblings, like one of you becomes the athlete and one of you becomes the A student and the other one becomes, that's me, the clown. And you know, I was going to just stay out of it. And I fell in love with theater in high school. And I told myself, I'm going to be a stage manager. And that way I'm not competing with my brother, who's going to be the great writer of the family, until he went to grad school. Now, he's the reason that I went to college. He said, hey, we're under the poverty limit. We'll get scholarships. I said, what? He said, no, seriously, we can do this. I mean, there's always got to be someone who says to a young person, you know what? You can make money as an artist. You can make money as an actor. You can make money as a playwright. And here's how. If you put the tools in people's hands when they're young, right, then this isn't such a strange thing to do. He went to grad school, University of Virginia. He was a member of SDS and the Gay Activists Alliance, and white boys from First Families of Virginia jumped him outside the gay bar and beat the shit out of him. I had to come down and get him. The faculty voted out his fellowship because of his gay activism, and he stopped writing. And then several years later, he died of HIV. So I think a number of us also think about this. And even though it's still hard, I didn't call myself a writer, seriously, until I was maybe 39 or 40 years old and I wrote Baltimore Waltz. But at some point you have to think it's not about me writing, it's about me witnessing. You know, if he can't write, then someone has to write.
Mm.
You know, he was passionate. I mean, this is a guy who was laying down in front of George Wallace's motorcade saying, you know, be by the phone in case I need bail. Someone in the family has to pick that up. And if, you know, whatever way we have to get into this box that we call the theater, tell your grandmother's story. People have to know your grandmother's story. Tell the stories of what it feels like right now for you to walk the streets. I want to know that story. I won't know that story unless you tell it. So I so love working with writers. And the good news was that, you know, I not calling myself a playwright, being a secretary, learning how to type, I had all the skill sets to work 2 or 3 jobs, which means, you know, I could start a playwriting program and work with these extraordinary writers. The 21-year-old Lynn Nottage, I got to produce her first play. You know, convincing Milo Cruz to come from Intar, you know, to Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm really, really glad, because here's the thing, and I really strongly believe in this. Teaching and practicing your art are the same thing. They go hand in hand. We are not artists unless we are learning from other artists in the room, and we are not artists unless we pass that on. I am the writer that I am today because Milo Cruz, Kiara Hudiz, Terrell McCraney. I mean, they taught me. So, and I don't ever want to be alone in my own room. And this is the difficulty of COVID, right? All of us right now are having, which we should just enjoy, writing blocks. The great thing about this writing block that we call COVID, or shall we say the Trump era, that we have accumulated so much to write about. So I'm very excited for the next couple of years.
Yes, that was so good. Both of you all. Thank you so much for that. I know
Yeah.
a lot of the people who are watching this, they struggle with this exact same thing. And a lot of the people who are watching this are at a critical juncture where they have to make a decision between a full-time job, full-time artistry. How do you split your time between the two? And yeah, it's important to answer the call of the universe, like Herbert said, and then also be a good, you know, in order to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student. And I had never thought about that, but you're right, Paula. Yeah, being a teacher has absolutely influenced me as an artist. It has really kind of given me the inspiration I need to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about that way. So we actually had Annie from the comments is saying thank you to Paula because she's been struggling about whether or not to commit her life to activism or to the arts. I read once. I'm an academia person. I don't cite my sources. I think it was Barbara and Carlton Millett once said that Afrocentric theater is theater with a purpose. And then I also often quote Anna Devere Smith, who said, "Of course I am political. My very existence is political, and to try to deny my politicalness would be a political decision." And so, if you are a person that is an activist, you can utilize your art to promote that activism. Yes,
I agree with you. I agree with you. But I think ultimately you have to decide what you are. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You could do both, but really there's one that's leading the way. And I chose art, you know. Activism is a close second, but I'm not an activist. You know, if people ask me, what are you? I'm an artist, not an activist is another form of art, you know, that other people are better at than me, you know.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
I wanted to ask you, so this is where we are, right? Like let's say we've all decided we want to be artists. How do we pay our rent? This is what I need to know, right? How you say, okay, I'm an artist. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. How do you make sure that you're, you know, not eating ramen noodles every night, you know, a few nights a week, yeah, but not every night. And I know specifically we've had several playwrights in the chat ask about how to make money as a playwright. So if you all could give us some advice on that, That would be super helpful.
I want to put this out here and see how the two of you also respond to this, as well as all of the artists who've joined us, which is I have never seen a division between theater, film, television, media, radio plays, whatever it is, it's the same field. And the unfortunate thing in this country is we have been led to believe you have to choose. No, 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 no. You know, if you're writing for television, you're using different skill sets than the continuity you need to have if you're writing a play, but they are the same skills. And finally, this country has moved closer to international theaters and cultures where it is the same. If you're living in London, you're going to be at the Tricycle Theatre, you're going to write something for the BBC, you're going to be doing whatever, you know, over there they have radio plays. And so one of the things that I really do want to put out there is that you're more likely to find an entryway into television writing and film writing as a playwright, because you're actually producing yourself on a small budget, getting it into the world, and now the world is on Zoom. So the visibility for writers right now couldn't be better. But I actually argue for second and third jobs. In that, you know, Herbert, I don't know that I can just say I'm a writer. I do feel that kind of division. And I want to say that, you know, by necessity, I have done jobs like, you know, a prison program with women in maximum security and started that program, oh golly, 30 years ago. I couldn't pay enough money to those women in terms of what they taught me. So one of the things I've done, and now my resources are out of date, but I'm imagining people in our chat have a lot more resources, as I know, LJ, you must have, having founded Maroon, and you must have, Herbert, in terms of the active career you've had. I do something that I used to call the biz talk with all the writers I worked with. And we would bring in bottles of wine, open up the wine, and I'm like, okay, everybody at this table, we're going to share all of our resources. First, show me your resume. Second, show me your bio. Third, do you know what a CV is? Well, you've taught. You know, if you went to Brown, or if you taught, you know, in summer, a youth program, you're a teacher. You need to have a CV so you can apply to colleges for those jobs. And then I basically say, okay, tell me what your God plays are. And they said, what does that mean? I said, tell me the 10 plays you love the most right now. Contemporary plays. Who do you love? What writers do you love? Okay, now go to Google. Find out what theater companies in the United States, not the premier of, say, the Hurt Village, find out who in the United States right now, if Katori Hall is one of your saints, who right now is doing the Hurt Village. Then sit down and write a personal letter to those people by name, do your research, and say, you know, dear Crowded Fire, I see that you've just done one of my favorite writers and one of my favorite plays, The Hurt Village. I've written a play, you know, I feel very much inspired by Katori Hall, and I hope I may submit it to you. It's basically that. Do our research, use Google, and then one other thing. I'll give you two sources right now. There's something called the Foundation Center. This is how I started the program at Brown. This is how I got money from the Revlon Corporation and the Johnson Foundation to pay my playwrights to go into the women's prison and teach the women there. You go to something called the Foundation Center. Now in LA, there's an actual physical location. You might have to do this after COVID. But in New York, they also have one. I've gone in person. I've just thrown myself at the librarians and said, please, I want to start a prison program. Please help me. And I will say to everybody who works with me, okay, where are you going to end up after grad school? Where are you going to end up? And some people will say, I'm going home to Macon, Georgia. I'll go, great. Are there youth programs in theater, in acting, directing, theater, and playwriting? What populations live in your town? Like this is on my wish list too. See here, but I can't do it. I desperately want to work, but now I am a senior citizen. I wanted for a long time to work with senior citizens and craft Romeo and Juliets, where all of the people were Romeos and Juliets, and they would tell us the first boy or girl they loved. So just to do a drama program, because I think it does something interesting with the memory. Are you a veteran? I got money to work with veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq and Korea at the Wilma Theater, and they were paid to come in. Do you know what I mean? So stop and think of who are your people? Who is your community? Who do you love? And all of those are things that you can research on Google, go to the Foundation Center. Lastly, look up transartists.org and look at places like that, or Artist in Residence. There's an organization of all of the artist colonies. If you're starving, please get in touch with a colony. There are many in the California area. There are colonies all over the world where they will take you in and give you room and board for 3 months and treat you as you deserve to be treated as an artist. So look up transartist.org. It will list opportunities that are international. Look up the Foundation Center and say, hey, I want to do an after-school program, or, I want to work in the prison, or I want to work at the Jewish Community Center, whatever it is. You can raise enough money to pay your rent and work part-time and be that full-time artist. But more importantly, these people, particularly if you're working with kids, they're going to look at you and go, oh my God, I can be LJ when I grow up. Just give that example. And it's not that we're not going to be rich, but hey, if you do a small workshop of your new play because you have a part-time job and that allows you to write, and that gets on, hey, let me know when, you become a staff writer from that gig, and send a check to the not-for-profits that you've worked for.
Wow, can you be my agent?
You bring it all full circle.
You're my agent. You have great ideas. Those are great ideas. No, I was so fortunate to grow up imagine being an artist in San Francisco now. That's unheard of. But I was in the Mission District in San Francisco in the late 70s, 80s. That's where Culture Clash was founded. Yes. And, we were able to, you were able to get an apartment we call them flats over there, a Victorian flat for $600 or so. So, with between 3 roommates, $200 or $250 each, right, you're able to, survive, right? And eat burritos or whatnot. And the best burritos in the land. And do theater, be an artist. You could stay in your community and be an artist. I was doing silkscreen posters. I was a graphic designer. So I was, again, always in the arts. Yeah. So that was paying my rent, and I was able to do Culture Clash. And, and Culture Clash luckily became successful pretty soon after that, because Luis Valdez and El Teatro Campesino took us under their wing, and they toured us through the burrito belt, as we call it, the Southwest and the California colleges, community colleges, the burrito belt. And then when we moved to LA, again, another angel, Gordon Davidson, saw us at the Los Angeles Theater Center and says, come over and we'll help you develop you. So again, it's just, we were just at the right place, right time. I think it's very hard right now. I mean, I just can't even imagine somebody starting right now in San Francisco, for example, and to be a full-time artist. That's just impossible, you know. But we were in a great fertile time where that was still possible.
So this brings up an interesting question, and I just want to throw this back to both of you and people who have joined us in terms of ideas. This is, I think, the central weakness, is that our arts policy believes in theater as entertainment value only and what the market will pay for, rather than saying this is an essential, crucial service for all of our people and should be accessible to everyone. Other countries don't have that attitude. We do. Okay. So, you know, I was on the waiting list for, not kidding, probably 10 or 15 years. New York in the 70s built 2 apartment houses for artist housing where you could pay based on your income. Manhattan Plaza and West Bank. And I joined the thousands of people on the list, never got in, and finally thought, well, the only rent that I can afford after a series of disasters and health issues that basically left me on the brink of homelessness, I thought, well, you know, I can drive or I can take the train from Providence, Rhode Island. I'm going to go for that job. And many of the writers that I enticed to join me in Providence found out that they could buy a house on their stipend. And so there have been, like Nilo Cruz and Gina Gianfrido, I'm happy to say, stayed in Providence for years after they graduated because it's easy enough to take public transportation. I imagine that's what people are doing in San Francisco right now, that artists are for hours getting into San Francisco. Here's the other question, though. What scam can we think of to address housing? Now, for a while, and this is why these 2 apartment houses were built. Now, this is a brilliant idea in terms of us getting together of activism. You could only build a high-rise if you provided housing or an arts complex in the basement and the first floor. That got passed in New York in the 70s. And then, of course, the Reagan years came in. But isn't there a way that we could also, whether it's sweat equity or something, start to barrage our city councils in San Francisco, everywhere, and say, listen, you know, I'm on my part-time job. I'm going to run an after-school program. You have to give me space. And oh, by the way, it would be nice if I had a bathroom and, you know, one room with a kitchenette attached, right? So how can we do this? Because this, I think, is really stopping a lot of people at the very start. What scams can we pull? It's getting harder and harder to do the squat. These days.
It is. I love that you asked that question because subversion is my middle name, Paula Vogel.
I knew looking at your face.
Subversion is personal hobby of mine. I actually have been thinking, I've been mulling this over quite a bit the past few years because I'm an artist that needs housing. And LJ Subversion Jenkins, that's me. I have friends that are artists in the Oakland and San Francisco area, and a lot of them live in warehouse environments where they have taken over a space and they live in sectioned out apartments within that space. But as we've seen in recent years, those spaces are not safe. There was a very big fire at one and some people passed away not too long ago. Right. So I almost wonder, is it a question of taking spaces where artists are already occupying those spaces and bringing them up to code and getting them the permits that they need so that they're no longer squatters, right?
Right.
The other thing I've been thinking of is if you run a business out of your home, you can deduct a portion of your rent towards your business expenses. That's why Maroon Arts and Culture will never have a physical location. We will always be run out of my home because I need that kind of help, in order to do my work. So I think that if we continue to bring our minds together, we can come up with some ways to make that happen. But you're right. I do think it is really important. I do.
That's a great idea.
In terms of the stuff you're doing, and I'd love to know, Herbert, what you have been doing I know that the Trump tax laws, I am hoping, will be pushed back, because one of
Right.
the populations it hurt the most was actors and artists and theater folks. So, being able to subtract the cost of maybe your agent or your manager or, newspapers, theater tickets, going to the movies. And I'm imagining, right, LJ, that you're not only taking a part of your rent, but your electricity and all the bills to maintain. What things have you done? I'm curious, Herbert, that kind of uses what you are doing, both in Culture Clash as a playwright. Are you still doing are those is that your silk art behind you?
Yeah, silk screen. Yeah, this is my Black Lives Matter poster. Yeah.
Oh my God, I hope you're still doing this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I'm doing it digitally now. Because I don't have a silk screen studio and all that, so I do it digitally on my iPad. That's a question about taxes. I've never been quite good at that anyway. So my tax guy does wonders for me. I just give him my bills and he does the wonders, but I don't really have a strategy. I don't. I have my tax with Culture Clash, and that's easier that's a private. We're a partnership. By the way, we decided in the very early in our career that we were not going to be a nonprofit, because we did not like this. We wanted to be independent from that. We didn't want to get grants that would tie us down to a certain project. We wanted to be completely independent. So we're a private, we're a partnership, a California partnership. And that's worked out for us.
That's really useful to hear.
Yeah.
Extremely useful. And because, as our viewers know, I have been going back and forth on this nonprofit thing for several months.
It makes you an administrator right away. And we didn't want any of that. First of all, we didn't know how to do that. We didn't want to do that. It was 3 dudes that didn't know how to do it. We didn't want any of that stuff. So we just, we're a partnership, and which gives you another mindset of a hustler, right? We hustle. We're hustlers. We're always trying to get our own work. We're not dependent on a grant to create our art. You know what I'm saying? It's a very different mindset.
Yeah.
Yes, we talked about this in some previous panels about the difference between nonprofit and for-profit. And also before we came on, I told you, Maroon Arts and Culture, the future of Maroon Arts and Culture, I'm not really invested in making it just the biggest nonprofit arts organization, but I am interested in getting into that commercial side, because there is more money in commercial theater production than there is in nonprofit theater production. And I also find that in educational programs, they tend to hold Broadway up as an example, like, oh, the Broadway show, this, that, and the other. But then all of the classes, internships, and education you get is geared towards the nonprofit world, without anybody really explaining that there's a fork in the road here. The commercial theater side and the nonprofit theater side, though they work together at times, they're not the same thing. And I just think it's interesting how in a lot of education programs, they never really break that down for people.
Yeah, they don't distinguish. I guess the best possible thing would be to do both in a way, or to form a relationship where you're using a not-for-profit as an umbrella.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what Culture Clash does. Our agent, Circuit Network in San Francisco, she's been Nola Mariano. She's been handling us for 35 years, and so she writes grants for us. You know what I'm saying? Indirect. Or we use the theater, let's say the regional theater, they have tons of people there writing grants. Let them do that, let them get the grant for us to do the work.
Yeah.
So that alleviates us from being administrators.
Right.
I'm good at it and I don't like doing it, and we concentrate on the art,
This is where I'm at right now.
Let me throw this out. Just, I know that they exist in New York. I'm imagining they exist in LA and San Francisco. There is an organization called Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts.
Yes.
And a lot of pro bono is given by law students as well. So if you look, you may find workshops for artists where you can show up and the lawyers will say, here, did you know you can, take this off and this off and this off? The other thing I want to just mention is, again, in the time of COVID, I don't know if they're doing it online. Every state arts council gives open workshops on how to write grants. So if you are going in the direction of, let me start my own program, so I have a part-time job that pays my rent, it's great to show up and have, or, maybe LA Arts Council does it as well. Get one of those workshops. Once you write one grant, I mean, here's the truth, right? Is that everybody's already created art. That's harder than anything we're talking about. I mean, if you are brilliant enough to create something that has never existed before, and that only exists in this unique form because you made it, all the rest is actually easy. And it's just using, I never thought about this until I got maybe my 100th rejection letter. That when I get a rejection letter, and I slapped myself and went, why didn't I listen to my grandmother? My grandmother always said, when someone takes the time to write you, write them back a thank you note. So I started writing back these letters that I would have spent the whole day weeping, instead writing back, Dear Mame Hunt, or Dear Joy Meads, thank you so much for your kind note about Indecent, and so sorry it doesn't fit your season, but thanks for asking for the next one. And I know you've got a lot of plays on your table, so it matters a lot to me that you reached out. Thank you. And I started doing this in my late 20s. Within 7 years, they still weren't producing me, but I was like on a first name basis. These amazing, great dramaturgs, and dramaturgs are the saints of our field. They are doing the heavy lifting. And they're going to then, kind of plug for you. So I wasn't getting productions, but I was getting stage readings. I was getting a chance to be mentored. And the thing I didn't realize, which is also so generous, is that people would then pass around the script that had been rejected by the O'Neill. I was rejected 24 times, but who's counting? And send me to a tiny little theater called Theater Rhinoceros in San Francisco, where I had my first play produced, and Baby Makes Love.
On 16th Street, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so
our agent is right above them.
Is that right?
Circuit Network, yeah.
I love that. So, I mean, to me, it's not about making it big time. It's about, how can I find a port in every harbor? Where can I find the 50-seat theater and a sofa bed? I'm probably over the age of sofa beds, but I'm not over the age of 50-seat theaters.
Energy creates energy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You put that little energy out there, it comes back. It's like a wall, right? You throw the ball, comes back.
And circles rise faster together than any individual can.
Yeah.
So let's know each other. If you're not going to do my play, fine. Let me tell you, here's 10 plays that I love. If I get a chance to have a cup of coffee with a dramaturg or an artistic director, and they say no to me, that's great. Have you read? And we all do this, because as we rise together, we're going to rise with our colleagues and with the people we love. So it's not about who do you know. It's like you're saying, Herbert, it's the energy. You've put so much energy into the world through the things you've created, the organizations you've created, the connections you've made. And that just doubles and triples and quadruples.
Yes, I know that people in the chat are really appreciating these words. We had somebody say, thank you for the tip about writing a thank you note, even for the no's, even for the rejections. And then also Sabrina is working on grad school applications. She's got one due today. She said she's going to make some adjustments to her essay based off of some of the things that we've said today. So today, so Sabrina is actually in our working group that we have once a week. And so I've got a couple of questions from them. Also, if anybody out there watching, if you all have questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and we will make sure that we ask them. So from the working group, for Herbert, one of the participants wanted to know, they say that booking voiceover roles is more difficult than in-person roles. Do you agree with this? Why or why not? That's what they wanted me to ask you.
I'm not that sure. I don't do too much voiceover work. It just happened that I used to do it earlier in my career, and then I stopped doing it. And then of course, they're probably talking about my role in Coco. And it happened this way. I was brought up to Emeryville to be a cultural consultant for Coco, and which was really good of them. They brought up Octavio Solis and other people to look at the script and comment on the authenticity of it. And while I was at the table, the hustler that I am, while I was in the table with all the producers there, I said, I can do voices, And they're like, oh, wow, yeah, well, you're with Culture Clash. Yeah, I'm with Culture Clash. I can do voices. And they're like, yeah, okay. We remember that. And sure enough, a month later, I got a call saying, come up to Emeryville, and we're going to give you the two voices of the uncles.
Oh, my God.
Uncle Felipe and Uncle Oscar, right? And again, it's taking that opportunity. I was in the nest, right? And I took my opportunity. I took my shot, as they say, and I got the voiceover. And now that since I've done that a voiceover, then I got a voiceover agent, and I was able to get other voiceovers like Green Eggs and Ham on Netflix. I'm on that one as well. But what's good about voiceover work is that you can do it in your house. You can audition in your house. You don't have to go anywhere. And more auditions like that are, everyone's asking for self-tape now anyway, so you don't have to leave your house anymore. But yeah, voiceover work is really good if you can, get an agent and get in there.
I wanted to ask you about Coco because, like I mentioned before, I'm a dramaturg. I do research, I contextualize historical and cultural. And I really feel that the film industry needs that as a job, but I can't tell you how many times people will be like, that's a job that doesn't exist in the film industry. I personally feel like if I didn't insist, it wouldn't exist in the theater world either all the time.
I think on Coco, there was a lot of voices. I think liturgical voices there. I mean, those scripts take like 10 years to write over there. They really take a long time. They really, really go through it. Like, that's why they're so kind of, pitch perfect. It's because they really spend a lot of time with them,
So how do you have any advice for us? Because as Paula mentioned, these industries really are not that separate. Do you have any advice for people who may want to get into film, television, media? How do you take your skills from the theater and apply them into these other areas?
Well, again, I think this whole era of self-tape has really helped because you can send your tapes from wherever you are. You don't have to necessarily live in LA to send your tapes. Again, it's like I'm not a big Hollywood guy, so I don't know if I have the advice. Theater's my thing, but it's helped me a lot. But I don't have a lot of experience in Hollywood, auditioning. That's the truth.
So hustle.
I don't have a lot of audition experience in theater because I create my own work. So I hardly ever have to audition for a Shakespeare play or whatever because I don't do that. I create my own work.
I feel that. I too. This is why I started Maroon Arts and Culture. This is why I named the organization after Maroons, because when you can't find a place for yourself, sometimes you got to make a space,
Yes, exactly. Create your own space. Yes. I mean, Culture Clash, we're the most unacademic group, we didn't grow up. We we don't have degrees in theater. We're not PhDs. We don't have masters in theater, you know. You guys were all talking about that before this meeting. You guys were really talking about, you know, Brown and Yale and all this academic stuff. I'm like, fine, that's great, but we didn't come from that. We came from a real kind of working class, blue collar, you know, El Teatro Campesino point of view, and that's how we, you know, that's how we forged our way, you know, just by doing it, you know, doing it, not thinking about it, doing it.
I absolutely hear that. I also have to say that, and of course, I am feeling. I wouldn't maybe use the word defensive, but you know, I grew up working class, and I didn't have these degrees either. But I'll be damned if every university in the country shouldn't be putting aside their budget and their time and a place for artists in the university. And they should be paid for. They should not be charging $100,000. Yale no longer charges like that. They did, but I wouldn't take the job. University of Texas has an extraordinary program in social activism and the arts and money for artists. So the reason that I go back to universities isn't that I think that we as artists need them, they need us. And the other thing I want to say about this, you know, there's that infamous editorial that was written last week about Dr. Jill Biden using doctor in front of her name. I think that all of us should be given the opportunity to get those credentials. And that there should be, why? Education is social mobility. That's what it is, you know, and you know, I have a very short fuse for people who suddenly talk differently because they have a PhD. I have no patience for that. You know, if you've got an education, you better give it back and you better use it. So I absolutely hear what you're saying. We have I think, degraded the notion of what education is in this country. We have put down school teachers who are the heroes of our society. And I think that this is something that has happened under Republicans. We've denigrated the importance that education belongs to everybody. And this is where I stand, and I know I'm going to probably be ranting about this the rest of my life. If libraries and museums have free admission, so should theaters, so should concerts. So should every arts organization, because they don't belong to the board members. They belong to the people who want to come in and participate. So, you know, this is just a small thing on this whole dynamic of what America is so fucked up. But we've made it a white upper class. That's what it appears to be. Art form. I'll be damned if it is.
It's not attainable, right? It's not for us. And,
right.
You know, it's very intimidating. Very intimidating.
Exactly. It stops people from applying. I had to go out to the artists that I found and loved and say, please apply to my program. And they go, I can't afford your program. I'd say, can you afford to be paid? I mean, nobody will apply because, you know, your family and your friends are probably saying, you want to go where? You want to go to UCLA or you want to go to, you know, it's like off the map. Well, we have to redraw that map. And I think that that's what the arts does. I think the arts is the most subversive thing we can do.
Yes,
I really do. I mean, I'm now being inspired by LJ, and both of you. You know, you're like the hustle, the subversion. Sign me on for that.
And then on the other hand, in this country, like Isaac Asimov says, you know, there's a cult of ignorance, right? Where being ignorant is also appealing. You know, it's also like, I'm going to stay in the ignorant, in the University of Ignorance, you know, and I'd rather stay there and just let people tell me what to do, how to think, and and I'm fine there, and that's really scary too.
This is such a great conversation because I'm a person that I really feel I live at the intersection of both. I mean, I went back to get my master's in my 30s, so I didn't go all the way straight through. I was a public school theater teacher for 5 years, and my students teaching in a Title I school, which is code for the hood, they inspired me to go back to school because I needed more resources for them, right? Like I was annoyed that I couldn't reach them through curriculum the way that I wanted to because it didn't exist. So I went back to school with that attitude. And so from the very second I got there, it was like subversion. Like the very first paper I wrote for my program was called The Aesthetics of Bodak Yellow. And it was about Cardi B as a performance artist. And then when the professor was like, this doesn't make any sense, I was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that because I am prepared to argue with you about this. So it is kind of, you got to do a little bit of both. And as Paula and I were talking about before we got here, when it comes time for that PhD, they should be paying you to go to school. You don't pay for the PhD. They pay you. And even with some MFAs, I think Paula was saying with some MFAs, don't go back until it's time for them to pay you. In my opinion, that's the best way that you can take advantage of academia. If they have to pay you to be there and they understand that when you get there, this is the aesthetic, this is the perspective that I'm coming from, then you're kind of more in a position of power at that point. That's what I'm going for. That's exactly what I'm going for. But yeah, academia really, what it also did for me was it bought me some time, right? Because I knew I didn't want to be a public school teacher for the rest of my life. I knew that there was art inside of me. Like Herbert said, I needed to answer the call of the universe. I loved working with the kids. They helped remind me what I love the most about theater, the imagination, the creativity, the making something out of nothing. But I didn't know, I had never heard of dramaturgy at that point. And I didn't know what to do next. And so I went back to school to buy some time. And then I took an extra year because I needed more time. So that's also something to consider for those of you watching, thinking about going back to school.
And the other thing I want to say about this is that when I started the Brown program, the ages of the playwrights in that program after we designed it was about, I'd say maybe 25 years to 60. That, it's so important. When we talk about diversity, we also have to talk about diversity of age. Mm-hmm. And I often feel that education may be wasted on the young, i.e., why go from a college program into a graduate program? If you're going to be a priest, shouldn't you find out if you like attending mass? Mm-hmm. So this is the time to go to the Foundation Center and find a job, in a community center running a theater program after school, right? Mm-hmm. And then find a way to start a theater company and put up through sweat and gum and tape, put up your new plays, and find out if you love doing that. And by the time you reapply, it will be paid. So, yeah. I mean, most really wonderful programs, and this is the other thing, go to a place where you love the faculty. UCSD has an extraordinary faculty. I mean, who wouldn't want to be with Naomi Azuka and Deb? They're great people. They're attached to La Jolla. It's all over the country. And I also still want to go back to this. Do apply to artist residencies. Because I think what you're saying is that the most precious commodity is time. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about all these scams, we're trying to find a way to give ourselves time to think and dream and write. Mm-hmm. For me, teaching gave me a summer. My God, I got a summer every year. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. What job gives you that, Mm-hmm. So an artist colony, I mean, Nilo did this the first year after he got out of Brown, and I so admired him. He went to all of us who were living in Providence and said, "How big is your basement?" I said, "I had a pretty good sized basement." "Why?" And he said, can I put my bedroom in your basement?" I went, "Sure." So there I am with, Nilo's headboard in my basement. And then he went to other friends and he went, "How big is your basement?" So he just wiped out his apartment, packed 2 bags, did 4 artist colonies across the country, and did nothing but write for the first year. And in that year, all paid for, Gerasi, I believe, is in California. He went to the McDowell colony, which is where Our Town was written. He got a stockpile of plays. I thought that was so, so smart. So here's a question. Are you at, I mean, in a way, COVID is our
doing that. I'm kind of doing
break, right? But if you can figure out how to take a break for a year, that's not failure. That's not getting on with it. That's the incredible gift of time. Is there someone who can water your plants, feed your cat, subsidize your apartment rent, and go, for example, W Cross is in the foothills of Wyoming. They'll take you for 3 months. It's beautiful. And all of these places are free, and oftentimes I don't get enough applications.
This thing about education, I mean, like I said, we didn't come up formally through theatrical education, but that can only get you so far. When we were young and sexy, Culture Clash could get away with it for a while, you know what I'm saying? But then after a while, I felt like, oh, I'm lacking theory, I'm lacking things, I'm lacking some basics. And that's when self-education, then I had to go back to the American classics and get familiar with, what are people talking about,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now I'm Shakespeare, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are they talking about? Who's this? I had to re-educate myself in order to get back into the groove, because, we created our own energy at first, but it'll only get you so far. You need education.
Oh my gosh, don't say Shakespeare around me, because I've got like 3 friends right now that are like, ma'am, your knowledge of Shakespeare is extremely lacking. I'm like, I don't really know Shakespeare like that. They're like insisting that I read. Yeah, but you're right.
Yeah, I'm not an expert by any means.
But you do have to
rediscovering it. But as I get older, I need it more and more. And I did an adaptation of Henry IV, and it was like one of my biggest successes, called Henry.
Now we're trying to do a version of Antony and Cleopatra through Maroon Arts and Culture, but my friend that's kind of spearheading that project is like, all right, so when we go to the text, I'm like, let me stop you right there. I need to go read this play.
Yeah, they assume that we all know it already, right?
Like, I really admired people who could just spout, quotations like, yeah.
Let's take some questions from the chat, because man, the time is flying. Okay, so I think that we've actually answered some of these. So somebody had a question about being an artist, about arts and activism, which I think we talked a little bit about that. Oh, this is an interesting one for both of you all, actually. What are some plays that inspire you? Plays that inspire you?
Well,
that's my vote.
I gotta say, for me, when I met Irene Fornés I was 27 years old, and she just changed my DNA. So just about everything that she's written. I love Carol Churchill.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, she's just one of. All right, I used to produce theater inside the cafeteria at the Women's Maximum Security, and there are 2 plays. I would bring in the undergraduate theater company, and there was a young, at the time, undergrad by the name of Ingenue Ellis, and I had not yet seen For Colored Girls. Until she performed it in that cafeteria in front of women. And, that play for me, the fact that, don't let anybody tell you what a play looks like, what a play should sound like. That play dances. Those characters are the women in red or the women in yellow. I just think Entezaki Shange broke so many rules of what one should do to write a play. And that did something that was so amazing. I remember the women and their faces in that cafeteria room as Ingenue Ellis just flung herself in their laps as the woman in red. So that was like a real learning experience moment for me.
Well, yeah, I have similar people. Jose Rivera is a good friend, and again, I guess he studied under Irene Reyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that style is great. I love Stephen Gerges a lot. Stephen Gerges, which reminds me of early Piñero, which was, Miguel Piñero was like, a god when I was growing up. You see Short Eyes and all these really, just amazing, strong, urban plays, right? Very, very muscular. I love that. And I grew up with the Latin American writers like Enrique Buenaventura and people like that. And that was my initial education. Yeah.
So many. It's interesting now. I'm having a harder time remembering older playwrights. So the thing is that now, I have this whole list of saints, and it goes on and on and on and on. But here's a play that a lot of people don't know. I started this thing called the Bake Off, which is you take a play that's quote unquote a classic. For example, we've done shake-offs instead of bake-offs on a lot of Shakespeare plays. So like everybody will read Hamlet and then we'll say, okay, you have to have a slightly overweight prince. You got to have, incest with the mother or whatever. And then everyone has to write it in 48 hours, right? So I read this play called The Swan by Elizabeth Egloff. And, it's like, hi, let's write a play about Leda and the Swan. Not exactly light material. What she did was so ethereal, so beautiful. It's a 3-character play, and one character is the Swan, and it's an absolutely beautiful naked man, a dancer on stage, who has come fluttering through her glass window. And from there, it just gets more and more amazing. So I use that play a lot, and I'll say to everybody, okay, we're going to do Swan bake-offs, right? So a lot of the plays that I love now are coming from these writers. Christina Anderson, we did a Dybbuk bake-off, the possession play. If you stop and think about how many possession movies do you love, how many possession horror films, but also comedies, and then this group of 20 writers sat down and in 48 hours came up with extraordinary possession plays. One of my favorites is called Good Goods by Christina Anderson. And I mean, what came out in 48 hours, I mean, she took longer to finish it. So I have this whole list, and I'm kind of scared to go through it. Like Sarah Rule, do I say Sarah Rule, but not say Chiara, but not say Nilo, but not say, and it goes on and on and on, because each voice is a teacher. You know what I mean? And my own teachers that I never had, but that I read in the library when I was 15. Frankly, I got to say this, and this may sound horrible. Eugene O'Neill doesn't have a lot to teach me these days. But Antoinette Nwandu has a great deal to teach me. So it's so interesting how quickly the field evolves and morphs in form. And the thing that's thrilling now, the thing that's absolutely thrilling, is new writing has never been better. And I am filled with hope because I know that the writers I've worked with are working in television and still continue to write for theater. So that makes me very, very happy. And I don't think the field has ever been this exciting.
Well, that's one way of surviving, right?
Yeah.
They're making money in TV and then coming back to the theater.
Yeah, because I got a whole master's degree and a lot of experience, but I'll still go PA someplace for $200 for the day. I mean, it is what it is. That's the lowest paying job in the film industry, but it pays more than jobs in the theater industry. Yeah. So if I got to take 3 days to make what I would make over a course of months in the theater, then that's not a big deal for me. Right. That's so good. I think that basically what Paula Vogel is saying is that y'all should check out the New Play Exchange so that you can be reading the new plays and let those plays inspire you. And I also hear a lot of inspiration from your culture, and reading plays that speak to your own personal artistic point of view and using those playwrights as teachers. We have a question from Annie, who wants to know, how do you deal with resistance to your work? This question says, Paula, you wrote a play that some consider controversial in the Jewish community. My art similarly celebrates and exposes the Jewish community. Can you please speak on resistance and how to overcome it?
Totally up to you. Your voice as a person is your voice as an artist. And so I find it hardest to fight for myself, and I find it very easy to fight for writers I love. So there's that. But I also find that, here, I'll give an example. I'm now catching up with the age of Moses right now. So I don't actually feel like I have anything left to lose. I finally, at the age of 65, along with my undergraduate student, Lynn Nottage, we both were produced finally on Broadway, and people acted as if I just lost my virginity. I'm sorry. I've been working in the 50-seat theaters for decades and having an absolutely fine time. So I have nothing to lose. And I have to say that I now am at the age where if a critic says something and I agree with them, I'll say, thank you, I agree with you. Or that's an interesting point. Here's the thing. I want to learn from my critics. I expect my critics to be so devoted and truthful that they teach me where my flaws are. But if on the Jewish Experience, Jesse Green, senior writer of the New York Times, you want to give Lynn Nottage and me a lecture on what makes a good history play or a bad history play, and when we as women writers are allowed to write history plays, did I touch your precious Holocaust? Jesse Green, you're not the only Jew in town. I have to tell my truth. Now, you may not want to tell the truth that directly, but here's how I figure it at my age. Next time Jesse Green writes a review about one of my new plays, I'm out there in terms of what I feel of his opinion. I very, very much care about the critics who are artists and who do that. So here's my question. When you want to write something that is your history and your ancestry, can you think about protecting not yourself, but the ancestry and the history? It might make it easier. And perhaps what I just did was not respectful, but don't follow me. I mean, I'm really, I'm going on 70. I have nothing left to lose. Please do it in a way that there might be an exchange where both sides learn. I have learned a lot from the critics. I've learned a lot from people who've come forward to tell me things I don't know about my Jewishness. I'm a newcomer. I'm a learner. You know what I'm saying? And I think that everyone right now has a responsibility in terms of representation. So this is an area that is fraught, but you've got to just believe in your legacy so much that if you're getting that resistance, talk about the legacy, and forget Jesse Green. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. I'm the same way.
We got that in our early career when we were doing comedy satire, using stereotypes, Latino stereotypes. But if you see it on a shallow level, yeah, they're stereotypes, but we're saying something. We're using that stereotype to handle dynamite in order to say and give a message that ultimately, that's what we're going for, But people just see the shine,
So in terms of culture clash and in terms of that resistance, what I'm curious about is, do people who resist that or who criticize that find that comedy is inappropriate?
Yeah, well, it's so subjective. Comedy right there. Just that alone is subjective. And, what we think is hilarious, somebody might find very offensive. And so it's hard to judge it, right, when it's comedy. But yeah, people want to see what they want to see. They want to see positive Hispanic images. Well, that's not us. That's not our thing,
Right.
We like to toe the underlines and the dynamite, and we want to handle all that stuff that's hard to talk about,
Yeah.
so that's what I think people have a problem with sometimes.
So do you think that pressure, and do you get this pressure too, LJ, that people somehow or other think that we need to be respectful in terms of a larger culture in the way that we represent our characters and our play worlds and our worlds?
Absolutely. And as my friend Coco just said in the comments, that's called respectability politics, where there's this expectation where you have to align yourself with what's right, which, is usually what's right, what's white. And if it's anything other than that, then it's not acceptable. I know for me, right now, I'm really into this. I'm thinking about what it means to be an Afrocentric dramaturg, right? And so where I'm at with that is it means starting, like, if you're working with Black actors, start allowing them to center themselves and their experiences, and then branch out and make connections from there. Because there is no one Black experience. There is no one Latinx experience. There's no one Jewish experience. We are each representative of those experiences. And so each one of those experiences is a valid expression of that culture. And so when you look at culture like that, then it's easy to push back when people are like, well, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, are you saying that there's something about my existence that's not valid? Who made you the boss? That's where I'm at with that.
Sorry to bring up Jesse. That was just a very particular example that, yeah.
No, but
I am really hoping in this moment of time, I mean, when we talk about when we reopen, I am also really hoping that the multitude of platforms now allows a much more diverse army of reviewers, of critical thinkers and commentators, because we're going to need that to get people back, I think.
I've made a goal for myself to become a theater critic for the LA Times. So if anybody is watching from the LA Times,
you
just
should.
know
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten
There's that
to
pressure, right? As people of color, the artists of people of color, we have a extra burden, right? Because they want us to be positive, or they want us to be, like, we have another responsibility that white writers don't have. White writers can be as irreverent as they want to be, as dark as they want to be, but we can't. For some reason, we're looked upon differently.
Yes, but at the same time, I find that as a person of color, as a Black person, the people I know, my friends, my colleagues, my peers, my fellow artists, are tired of trauma porn. They don't want to watch any more stories about slavery. They don't want to watch any more stories about people getting beat up and bitten by dogs. So then you really kind of have to make room for the comedy, because that's what people want. And then it comes down to, is it well done, right? You can't make a comedy out of some of these things if you got a room full of white people, if you don't have any Black people in the production meetings. Because I find often too, as a dramaturg, I'll come in at the production meeting, I'm the only Black person in the room. The director might be Black, the actors might be Black, but at the very beginning of the project, when the ideas are coming into place, there have to be Black people in that room from the very beginning. There's a quote from, I think it's Deborah Cardona, but she said that, I think it was her. I hate getting my sources wrong, but basically she made the point that if you bring in a Black dramaturg, you have not one experience, but a wealth of experiences, because I can tell you what such and such would have felt. I can give you writing and passages that this person wrote during this time period that are relevant. But what you really, really need are as many diverse voices and experiences in the room as possible from the very beginning. That's how I feel about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Cut out. You were cut out for a second.
Oh,
You-
sorry. I think I got to the questions in the chat, but if I didn't, just retype them because I'm trying to scroll up and make sure I didn't miss anything. I have a couple more questions for you all. So what I want to know is, being in the theater, being theater veterans, what changes have you seen that you like? And what changes have you seen that you dislike?
I'm I'm very anti-institutional right now. You know, since the whole COVID and Black Lives Matter thing, it has exposed. I don't have to preach to you guys. You know what I'm talking about. It has exposed the many shortcomings of the American theater and the regional theater. You know, it's just it's just so obvious that we need to change the demographics in our boards, in our leadership, and we'll start there. Start from the top. You know, start from the top. Even at the San Diego Rep, we were starting from the bottom. Even the retired white usher. You know, that was the face of our theaters. Like, you come here and you get these, God bless them, but they're just these retired white people from La Jolla greeting people to come see a Black play or a Latino play. It's just weird, right? So we have to change. We have to look at it from the top to the bottom. And I'm just being really anti-institutional right now. Maybe I have the privilege because I'm on a grant or whatever, and I don't need, I don't need anybody right now. But I'm just speaking the truth here. I just think we need to take this time to change everything about our institutions. I know it's scary. It's scary. I mean, I work at the San Diego Rep. Sam Woodhouse has been there for 45 years. You know what I'm saying? So that starts sounding like Fidel Castro, in Cuba, where it's like, okay, you did a great thing, Fidel, you did a great thing the first 20 years, but after that, it starts becoming a problem, So, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of institutions hiring our associate artistic directors,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of like the cynical me goes, well, why don't you step aside and let somebody take the real reins, not just the token reins. I'm talking about the real leadership, And so, I know people are trying, I know people are freaking out. They're freaking out right now, but I think it's good. I think it's really good.
I agree.
Wonderful,
I
Paula.
agree with everything that Herbert just said so beautifully. I mean, it is from the top down. I would like to see a world in which we put our money into people and not bricks, where we invest, in the entire age spectrum. If you're a 20-year-old playwright, all the way. The other thing that's happening is we have so many profound saints. Adrian Kennedy, Philip Gatanda, and the lists go on and on. So I think that theater has been driven by this what's of the moment instead of what's for the ages question of what we all need to see. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying, and I hope that this will change. I actually am thinking that artistic directors should have term limits. Precisely for that reason, seriously, that,
You're right.
the theater doesn't belong, it should not belong to the artistic director or the board members. It should belong to the community in which it stands. And you are welcome into our house for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And I think if we do something like that, I mean, I have to say that a number of people, white people like me, are stepping aside.
Mm-hmm.
Tina Fallon just resigned at Dramatists Guild, and I want to just say thank you. Let's all take. And I felt the same way in terms of teaching. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I shouldn't be the one in the program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy to know Darrell McCraney is running a program. You know what I mean? So what you're saying is absolutely true. But I also think that we're in an interesting time, and theater is politics, and politics is theater. which is, I think we need top to bottom to have regime changes. And that includes Congress, that includes senators, that includes the state houses. People are in our houses and they are invited as guests, and it's time, after they've given the gift of their service, and it is a gift of service, to move on.
I mean, look at our choices. Everybody was over 75. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, I'm not mean to be ageist, but shouldn't you be like retiring at that age? I don't want to be I don't want to be running a country at 70. I mean, that sounds absurd to me. Don't you need a little energy? You know,
waiting for AOC to turn 35.
The other thing, when you're talking about bricks, you know, and then we build these mausoleums, these regional theaters are mausoleums. I don't mean to put down the arena stage. Okay, that thing is a mausoleum, right? Imagine instead of 2 stages, there was 6 stages.
Yes.
100 seaters or 150 seaters. 6 different little companies in that one big mausoleum, instead of just, you know, this one big mausoleum that's taking up all the resources,
yes,
taking up everything, and they have to produce work that's safe because you got to pay for that mausoleum, right? So the work sucks everywhere because everyone's going, you know, everyone has to pay their rent. And mark my words right here. The regionals are going to double down on Eurocentric work and Shakespeare and all that stuff and musicals, because they're going to have to pay back all these months of not producing.
They're going to die out if they do.
Might as well forget. You're going to forget about this POC, forget about those plays, forget about challenging plays, forget about POC plays, LGBT plays, forget about that, because that's not going to pay their bills. So they're going to double down on the stuff that's safe.
I just had this conversation with 2 friends of mine who are artists the other day. I could not agree with you more. Not only are they going to double down on the quote unquote safe pieces, the classical pieces, the classics, the canon, but I think it's going to blow up in their faces for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're worried about limited capacity in these houses because of COVID, right? When we do open back up, you're not going to be able to have people smashed up next to each other like they have been previously. And so because of that, you're going to have to charge more for tickets. But also think about the average age, the demographic that's going to go see these shows. Is this the demographic that's going to be like out in the streets once COVID? You know, are they really going to want to be going to the theater in public? And, you know, I don't know.
Well, in a way,
yeah, in a way,
my age group will be the first. Not the first. We shouldn't be the first, but the third in line to get the shot, so that, you know, we can live another 5 years, so we can go to the theater. I don't know, but listen, I think that the idea, Herbert, that you're saying is absolutely critical, and it is, for example, what the public used to do. In every space in the public, this was back in the 70s, you know. This space was given to George Wolfe. This space was given to whoever. This space, and that felt like it deserved its name, the public theater. I would love to see this. There's only one thing I'd like to put as an amendment to your vision.
Okay.
Can we please have subsidized housing for artists attached to the mausoleum that's now companies in there? Yeah. So everybody who's working in those spaces can afford that rent.
You know, this is exactly what I was hoping to get to, because it does sometimes feel dire, right, to be a theater artist during COVID, and also to be a theater artist during a time when the theater very much is run by, you know, a certain demographic and a certain segment of the population. But calling out how the public used to be, with the way that they used to kind of assign spaces to playwrights, that lets me know that we can be that again. You know what I mean? Like, it's not impossible. It has been done, and it can be done again. I know Susan Laurie Parks did the Watch Me Work series at the Public over the course of a few months, which I thought was really interesting. And again, it felt very public, right? Like, it felt like me as a member of the public had access. Now, it was a limit on how you could get in there. It was like a whole process. But the fact that it's been done before should tell us that it can be done again. And so with this group of emerging artists that we're talking to right now, I just want to encourage them to don't water down your vision of the future. Don't feel that you have to cram yourself into some kind of cookie cutter, because you can look into the past and take your example from institutions and structures that have already done this type of work. And you can say, no, this is not impossible. What I envision, it's already been done. You can look at this example and see that it's already been done. I did miss a question from before. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Are there any queer theater spaces or playwrights that you're especially excited about? Laura Brown wants to know that.
That's great. Well, I'm very excited by this incredible rising group of trans writers that are just fearless out there. And I'm thinking of MJ Kaufman. I'm thinking of Basil Kremendal. I'm thinking that, in terms of spaces, again, this comes back to the institutional question. It seems that the way that writers, LBGT or trans groups, is by taking over space in other institutions. So whether it's, for example, the Women's Project, and then approaching Lisa McNulty and saying, we want a workshop specifically that our group can use to produce and to develop. I have to say to you, who should I be looking out for, and where should I be looking out for? I'm afraid that the groups for me happened before Reagan took over. And by the way, when you talk about things I regret, I do remember theater when one could be starving and still go to the theater before Reagan came, and suddenly there were board members who were Republicans, seriously, who told artistic directors what they wanted to see. Once upon a time, they wrote checks and said, thank you for doing art. And these small groups like Wow Cafe was extraordinary, and gave rise to people like Lisa Crone and Peggy Shaw and, Split Britches. So I need to find out what the queer theater spaces are right now. I'm out of date because I'm no longer recruiting for playwriting programs. So please let me know. Also, folks, if you want to look for, I want to just give a plug here for the Kilroys as a place to find great new plays and bless them for existing.
Yeah. Half of Culture Clash was queer when we started. The great Monica Palacios and Marga Gomez.
Monica!
We love Marga, don't we?
I love her.
They were original members of Culture Clash. They were with us for 2 years. So it's them two and 4 straight Latinos, which but it was never. Can you hear me? Yeah, it was never. We're from San Francisco. You know what I'm saying? It was just kind of in our DNA. It was in our water. So I never saw it as different. Richard Montoya, one of our members in Culture Clash, just wrote a play about Selena, translating Selena, where they hired, and this was done at a space in San Francisco. I forget the name of the theater right now. Oh my God, Sean San Jose. Anyway, Intersection for the Arts, and they did a whole trans Selena thing, which was amazing with trans Latino actors, and that's all. It's all amazing. This reminds me of the early Culture Clash days, the early Mission days, where we just we put up shows and performed them.
More please, more please. I mean, all of these theater companies that I love so much, like Alice B in Seattle, they're gone. But it's like what LJ was just saying, like launch the energy, put the energy in the world, and it doesn't have to remain there forever. But it causes that ripple of energy. It's there. So I'm hoping there are a lot of LGBT groups and theater collectives that are springing up now.
Campo Santo, that's the name of the group.
Teatro Campo, yes.
Yeah,
wonderful. Wonderful.
I hope so too. And yeah, I hope so too. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're out of time. So I think we have just enough time if you all want to leave any advice for our early career artists. I'm just looking at all of the comments in the chat. Everybody is just so grateful to your words. I'm so grateful for your words and for your wisdom. But if you have anything that's lingering, or if there's anything that you didn't get to say, to help to give advice for our participants, now's the time.
I didn't go to school. I don't have a theatrical degree and none of that. But, again, it goes back to the energy, put it out there, put it up, put it up, and they will come. And somebody will see you and take you under their wing, and your career will start. I really believe that. You have to put it out there first.
Yes.
Herbert, you are school. You are school. You are education. Yeah. So that's just my humble opinion, and
I love you.
I love you too. I'm so honored to share this space with both of you. So I'm looking forward to. It's the double U-Cross, WW Cross in Wyoming. If everybody Googles artist colonies, this group of collected artist colonies will come up. I just saw somebody ask. The W Cross if you look, UCROS.
Yeah. I need a writing retreat. I really do.
Oh, go to the W Cross. Seriously, okay. It's beautiful. I love that place. Anyway, that's all. I just want to express my thanks and my appreciation to everything you've done and you're doing.
Thank you both so much. I'm so sad this is our last week, but for all of our participants, remember, you can always go back. You can watch this video or any of our videos from the previous panels. Maybe after this conversation, you're rethinking whether or not you should go out and make your own work. I definitely want to encourage every single person watching to make your own work, produce your own work. If you're an actor or an actress, get on the internet. If you're a playwright, follow Paula's advice and put yourself out there. If you're a dramaturg, develop some plays from research like I'm doing. But there's no better experience than the experience that you create for yourself, and then the way that you put your friends on too. So I hope that everyone will stay in touch with me. Everybody watching has my email address. And thank you all so much for being active participants and for asking such wonderful questions throughout this entire series. And one more big thank you to Camille, who has been behind the scenes this whole time. I'm not going to bring her on screen because I don't think she would like that. But everybody say bye to Camille. She was just over there. And I will see you all on the internet.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Happy New Year.